So, Unhinged is the thriller about one woman having a very bad day with a tailgater. Now, I thought, like, this film, it has an interesting idea to it. You piss off one guy in traffic and then he comes after you. The way that the trailer set it up, like, my initial thought it was gonna be something like Duel, where it's just going to be one woman having a bad day, and then she's hounded by this guy, just chasing after her car, and just like the whole film would take place in the car. And it's kind of unfortunate that it isn't, and it just kind of turns into a like a thriller that feels like it could say something, and then doesn't. And I think what really hurts this film is that we're introduced to the antagonist first. And we see we learn about his backstory first before he terrorizes our protagonist. So the antagonist here is Tom Cooper, who's played by Russell Crowe, and he's basically an overweight, haggard, pill addicted guy who just got divorced, and he's basically really, really, really bitter about his wife. So he decides to, in the opening scene, go to her house, break in, kill her new guy, kill her, and then burn the place to the ground. So we immediately know Tom's a bad guy. We gotta look out for Tom. And then we're treated to a montage of how New Orleans is just in a state of chaos. People are on edge. They have anger issues. Everyone feels really tense. The cops are struggling to, maintain order in the city, just basically to establish the tone that, everyone is on edge. Oh, and also that there aren't as many cops in the city to explain, explain why, the cops don't rush to stop Tom as quickly as they do. You'll find there's a lot of scenes in here that will try to, make this a palatable thriller, so you're not asking too many questions about, well, wait, how did this happen and how did that happen? I mean, don't get me wrong, you'll still be questioning it throughout, but I guess they're trying, at least, because then we're introduced to Rachel Hunter, played by Karen Pistorius, and we're introduced to her. We have her handheld by having everything introduced to us. Like, when we first see her, she's asleep on the couch. She's overslept. She picks up the phone right next to a book that says, I believe the book's just called, how to talk to your children after you've just gone through divorce. And of course, on the phone is her divorce attorney, who is telling her that, their case isn't going good. And she's late for her job, and she's late for getting her son to school. And then, she's got to address that, she's living with her brother, and that, they're on hard times as well. They can't really afford the house, and their car sucks, and just money's tight, and just, everything is just building up for Rachel. But Rachel's trying to keep it together. She's like, okay, you know what? At least, I still got my son, and that's all I need. But then she gets pissed off in traffic, and Tom is just stopped at a light, and she just goes around and honks at him. And Tom demands an apology, and when Rachel won't give it to him, Tom decides to stalk her. And then after he decides to stalk her, he decides to go after all the contacts in her smartphone after he swipes it, and then just go after them and kill them, unless, Rachel will learn a lesson, I guess, or say she's sorry. I guess Tom they kind of established that Tom has nothing to lose here. Basically, like, he's counting on dying. Like, halfway through the film, he says, you know what, I'd be cool if cops, were to gun me down. I got nothing to lose here. But, like, here's the problem with that. Like, by about the halfway point in this film, it's pretty much established that, Tom is like a psychopath who's got to be taken down, and Rachel is going to be the one to take him down. For the first act, though, we're kind of led to believe that that Tom has some problems that were not addressed, like with his wife and with his family and his current mental state. And then we also bring up how, Rachel might have some problems of her own that she might have to address. Like, it's weird. There's these moments in the film where they're both on the phone with each other. They're talking to each other. And at one point, Rachel will ask Tom if he has any children, and Tom won't really give an answer to that. Later, Tom will also ask Rachel if she's been sleeping with her divorce attorney, and she won't really give an answer either. So like, I guess instead of having this questioning, because the characters aren't going to address it, we'll just accept them as hero and villain from then on out. Because by that point in the film, it's basically, just them trying to stop this. It's Rachel and her son in the third act of the film trying to stop Tom from killing all their friends and family. And it's just little more than that. And it's kind of depressing that it is. Because it feels like this film could be saying more about, what led to Tom's state, or, reveal a little bit more about his character. Because we get a lot of Rachel, and for spending the whole prologue with Tom, we really don't learn much about him. Like, he has some rants here and there about how, women, women are just bad news and you shouldn't marry them, and how nobody has any accountability in this world. So it's kind of like a very lesser version of Falling Down, where like you could kind of see, like, because we spent enough time with defense and Falling Down, we can see how how he came to that state of aggravation, and also establishing why he's in the wrong for being in that film. But with Unhinged, like, we accept that Tom is the villain pretty early on in the film. Like, to Russell Crowe's credit here, though, I do think he does a good job playing a killer. I mean, it's very awkward at first. Like, he starts off by having a Bayou accent in the first few scenes, and I think he just kind of drops it because, like, I think he realizes, like, as the film goes on, look, I can't do this. It's not working. So he just drops it. And after he does, he's pretty much okay in the film. He works as the killer. But we go through... We go, like, if the film were just Rachel locked in the car trying to get away from Tom, I think it would be a cool thriller. But she does have to get out of the car at a few points. And this leads to the climax where she leads him into a house, and she kind of has a knockdown violent fight with him. Which is, it's a well-staged fight. It's very brutal. There are a lot of brutal scenes in this film, particularly the car crashes where, like, cars crash into other cars or other people. They're fairly few, but when those crashes happen, they often catch you off guard. Like, you don't expect them. Like, there's one scene where Tom kind of runs a guy off the road, and just like, oh man, that's a little bit violent. But then you see that guy get hit by another car, like, much faster and with a heavier impact. Like, damn. There's another scene where you see a cop car get smashed by a truck, and the truck just obliterates it into pieces. And I was like, dang, these are some pretty cool car chases. I just wish there was a better story to go along with it. In terms of its themes, I mean, in terms of the assembly, I'll come clean. Okay, of course, thrillers all have a ridiculous premise. You have to suspend some disbelief. The one moment where you really have to suspend disbelief here is that there's a scene where Tom tracks Rachel to a gas station. And while Rachel goes into the gas station to pay for her gas and get stuff, and then look at the car, and then come back to the cashier and says, like, I think I'm being followed. Apparently, in that amount of time, Tom was able to steal her smartphone, was made aware that she had another phone in her glove compartment, and also made aware that she had an iPad in the back seat, which he attaches to the bottom of the seat so that he can still track it without them knowing about it. So it's sort of like, not only does, like, Tom know that she has all these devices that she can track with, and that he can, like, steal it and set this all up within, like, the minute that she was in the gas station. He's aware of electronic devices that even we're not aware of at this point in the film. It just comes out of nowhere. And by the time we get to the third act, like I mentioned, like, the fights were pretty neat, but, like, the dialogue, it's just growling. Like I said, like, Rachel mostly just makes threats by the third act, just like, I'm coming after you, son of a bitch, and Tom is basically just saying, society is, crumbled and all that, and doesn't really say anything of meaning aside from just ranting. And then, of course, by the end of the film, we get that moment where where the character right before they deliver the killing blow will say the one-liner, like it's just been revoked or something like that. And yeah, this is not one of those lines that's going to be memorable. Like it's going to be forgettable instantly. I had to think about it for a minute before I remember what it was. I won't spoil what it is, just in case anyone wants to have the fun of watching this ridiculous thriller. So yeah, like it's a well assembled thriller. Like I like the car chases, I like the knockdown throwdown fights. I appreciate Russell Crowe in the role. Russell Crowe in the role. And Karen Pistorius actually has a bit of charisma to her. I really enjoyed her performance in here. But it just kind of goes through the usual thriller motions by the end, and like by like the halfway point, it's pretty much given up any pretense of like having like a bigger focus on, like society's ills and what led to Tom being like this in the first place. And especially put a bad taste in my mouth by the end of the film, where it's kind of treated like, where it's just kind of like, hey, everything worked out for us in the end, didn't it? And you know what? Rachel learned a valuable lesson. Don't honk at people in traffic. Like, Rachel did not deserve any of that. Like, that should not be like your goofy bit to go out on. And that just like signals to me, this is just your kind of like middle of the road thriller, which is kind of sad. Like, it felt like there could have been more to this film. It could have been like a cool version of, like One Man Pushed Too Far and stuff like Falling Down. It just doesn't do that extra bit of work to make it, to make it actually say something instead of just being simple thriller thrills. Because like I said, by the third act, it's just a brutal knockdown, throwdown. Like, it's pretty much a wrestling match by that last act of the film. So yeah, it's a pretty disappointing thriller for all the potential it just kind of wastes. So for Unhinged, 2 out of 5 stars.